let's get straight to the chase. The law of supply and the supply curve. Supply. The supply of a good or services represents the willingness or ability of suppliers or producers to produce and or sell goods and services. So the key word here whenever we're talking about supply is the willingness and ability of suppliers to produce goods and services. So the law of supply is represented by this line here. It's an upward sloping curve. As the prices increase, the quantity supplied increases. So you can see as P1 goes to P2, you can see the quantity increase from Q1 to Q2. Also, as prices decreases, we can see that the quantity supplied decreases. So if we go from P2 to Q2, if prices decrease to P1, supply is only willing to supply, or willing and able to supply Q1. To better understand this relationship, just think of what the main objective of businesses are. It's to make a profit. So the reason why the supply or the quantity they supply increases is purely because there's more money to be made at any given price. So just remember that a movement occurs on the supply line when price is the only factor. So if prices went from, let's just say, $2, where they produce 60 units, and then it increases to $4, they're willing to produce 80 units. Since price is the only factor behind this change, it's represented by a movement. From moving from $2 to $4, we can see that the supply line is actually expanding. But if we went from $4 to $2, that'll be known as contraction of the supply line. So if you see a movement of the supply line to the left, it's always known as contraction. But if you see a supply line move towards the right, it's an expansion. Next, we got to look into the shifts of the supply curve. So what causes the supply curve to shift from one supply curve to a totally new supply curve? Because prior, we were just looking at movements from one point on the supply line to another. So the reasons why supply lines can shift is due to any other factor besides price. So some factors we got here are changes in the cost of production, changes in technology, productivity growth, climate conditions and other disruptions, and government intervention. We'll look closely at each one of these very shortly. Alright, when we shift the supply curve, just remember whenever you're talking of it moving from S1 to S2, you need to tell us that for any given price, they're willing and able to supply more product. Because you can see here at P1, we used to produce Q1, but all of a sudden something has occurred. Some non-price factor has occurred to make us be willing to produce essentially double the output. Well, it's not really double, but you can get the idea. It's definitely more than what it originally was at the same given price. Alright, let's look at the changes in cost of production. So let's just say, I don't know, what's minimum wage at? $19.49. So let's just say they increased it to $20 per hour. So what's that? Calculator. 20 divided by 19.49. So that's like a 2.6% increase in their price. So what happens if the cost of production increases by 2.6% due to changes in minimum wage? Do you think businesses will be willing and able to supply as much as they could before, knowing that their profit margins have decreased? Probably not. So what we'll see happening as a result of the changes in minimum wage, make it more expensive to produce goods and services, we might see that the supply line move from S2 to S1. So we'll go from producing quantity 2 to quantity 1 at any given price. Why? Because now businesses are less willing and less able to produce at any given price because their profit margins have been reduced. We can look at the opposite way now. How do we get from S1 to S2? So changes in cost of production. A good example would have been, I think, back in 2018. And what happened during this time was hospitality and retail took a hit for their penalty rates during this time. Let's see if I can find the information. On Sunday, full-time, part-time employees in the hospitality industry will receive their Sunday penalty rate cuts by 10%, whilst casual workers will continue to receive the same rate. In retail, full-time and part-time workers will see their Sunday penalty rates cut by 15%, while casuals lose about 10%. Fast food workers, penalty rates will drop by 10%, and pharmacy workers face a 15% cut. So you can see that businesses here are saving money due to the reduction in penalty rates over the weekend. So there's a good example of what can happen. changes in cost of production. So as a result of being able to reduce their costs on the weekend to produce goods and services, they might see that they might be willing to supply more at any given price because now it's more profitable. Okay, technological change. So how do we shift from S1 to S2? Well, let's look at good old Netflix for an example. Do you guys know what Netflix used to be before they were an online streaming service? Probably not. So let me give you a little back history.
Way to rent movies, as many as you want for only $17.99 a month and no late fees. Go to Netflix.com, make a list of the movies you want to see, and in about one business day, you'll get 3 DVDs. Keep them as long as you want, without late fees. Then when you're done, look, prepaid envelopes. Return one, and they'll send you another movie from your list. It's easy.
Netflix. All the movies you want, only $17.99 a month and no late fees.
Alright, so there you go. Netflix used to be a DVD distributor. So what you did was send it, you place your order online, you'll get it in the mail, and then you just have a prepaid envelope, you send it back to them. So eventually what happened with their model is they changed it over, and then they said if you guys actually love the movie so much or love the video game that you borrowed and you want to keep it, you can. You just write on the prepaid envelope, send it off with some money, and then what they'll do is send you the actual hardcover for it and the books or manuals that belong with that DVD or game. And voila, you got a final product. Alright, so they obviously moved away from selling physical media or renting out physical media to an online streaming platform. And as a result of them and the technological change, they're able to offer more products for any given price. And hence why they're able to shift from S1 to S2. Because when they're doing DVDs, physically they're limited by the amount of DVDs they had in their inventory. But with a streaming platform, virtually the supply is almost unlimited. So this supply curve could almost be horizontal. I wouldn't worry too much right now about that concept. That's more of a year 12 thing. So productivity growth, we can think back to Henry Ford. He found a way to reduce his assembly line process from 12.5 hours per car down to like 54 seconds or something ridiculous like that. As a result of being able to produce more with the same inputs and getting greater outputs, he was able to and willing to supply more at any given price. Alright, so climate conditions. Think of it right now. We've just been through some severe droughts and we've also had some severe flooding in certain parts of Australia. We just can't seem to win in the wonderful country that we are down under. Good example could be at the moment with rice in Australia, severe levels of drought have reduced our ability to produce enough rice at any given period of time. So you might see the supply for any given price shift towards the left. So instead of quantity 2 for P1, we might be able to only produce quantity 1 at P1 because it's physically impossible due to the climatic conditions. The opposite could be said where we've increased supply from S1 to S2. It could be because we had really good rainfall and as a result our crop yields were higher. So for any given price we're willing to sell more product because we have it available and it's more profitable. And we can follow this up with government intervention. Just look what's happened with Sunrise. There's a newspaper article, when was this? Back on the 29th of March, saying everyone is buying rice during the coronavirus crisis, but Australia's biggest rice company is struggling. Why are they struggling? Well, it says here, fewer than 70 Australian growers will harvest crops in the coming weeks out of the close to 800 producers in a good season. So it's a significant reduction in the amount of growers. Prolonged drought and water reform is likely to see production fall from last year's 54,000 tonnes, the second lowest crop on record. So you can see here that drought, so that's a climatic condition, has severely impacted rice, and also water reform, so a form of government intervention, which has forced producers to reduce their output. Wow, this article's great. It actually even covers about cost of production. So underwater reforms the environment, and permanent crops such as almonds, grapes, and citrus get water allocated before annual crops such as rice, cotton, and cereals. Sunrise Chairman Laurie Arthur said annual crop irrigation fell under siege. About 500 have joined a 1.5 billion class action against the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. Okay, so as you can see, with the government intervention on water rules and regulations, they cannot get enough water at a cheap price in order to keep producing how they're producing. So as a result, supply has gone from S2 to S1. So yeah, guys, I've given you some good examples for each factor and how that causes a shift in supply. But I suggest you guys read pages. I know it says on the screen pages 84 to 86. That's the old textbook. If you look at pages 87 to page 89, which is on section 3.6, non-price factors affecting the supply of goods and services, you can look at other different examples they have provided in order to explain why these cause a shift in supply. If you guys have any questions, holler me up. If not, move along.